Because it's all about you.
Yeah.
Speak your office, Blair.
Just one window.
Because it's all about you.
Yeah.
Speak your office.
Well, good grief, this last
What's the-
month.
Oh, it's going to cruise, I know.
Cool.
Man and Daniel boarded today, taking the boys, first time they've ever
All
been.
right.
All right. Well, we'll consider ourselves called to order for the July meeting of the Calvert City Planning Commission. First item of business will be the approval of the minutes from our May 15th meeting. You have those in front of you. What's the pleasure of the commission? Have a motion by Mr. Barrett. Do I have a second?
Second. Yeah.
Second by Ben. All in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed by like sign? And motion carried. All right, Greg, you want to lead us where you want to go now?
Well, why don't you finish up your short-term rentals discussion? I think the last time we met, it seemed like parking was really the only concern that anybody had. And after you talked about it for a little while, it seemed like parking is what it is. And you didn't seem to have any particular direction that you wanted to go on changing current parking regulations. Stay off the street, as long as you stay off the street. We don't care.
Well, and I think we got back to the point where essentially what we have as a bed and breakfast would work for the short-term rentals.
Right, right. The one thing that you did consider was maybe presenting for a public hearing an amendment in the ordinance for purposes of,
Clarifying some of that terminology there.
yeah, of defining short-term rentals. Right. And just say it's a bed and breakfast.
Right.
Well, if somebody wanted to look at, or maybe I think maybe in the appendix itself.
Referring short-term rentals back to bed and
Yeah,
breakfast.
yeah,
Cross-reference
just
also.
using the word short-term rentals.
Yeah.
In there.
Right.
But if we're gonna do that, you guys kind of have to, well, you guys need to say exactly how you want to change it, and then John needs to set it for a public hearing, and I'll present it. I'll bring something for you to look at. But I need to know what to put on. I need to know what to put on a piece of paper for you to look at. So. That down out of the way. And pull up. The zoning ordinance, and let's decide for sure how you want to. Am I basically correct? Is what I'm saying in the ballpark? The only issue is parking.
Yeah.
And really the only issue is. At least as far as proper zoning is concerned, you're not going to change parking, you're going to leave parking just like it is. But for purposes of clarity, you want to consider changing the appendix. You know what I'm saying? Let me get pulled up. Bed and breakfast. Did you want to just add to the bed and breakfast is a category in the schedule of uses.
Right.
Do you want to add short-term rentals into that same, and bed and breakfast are allowed as a conditional use everywhere.
Right.
And
And I think the only other issue there with bed and breakfast, there was, I think it defines how many rooms, is that right?
it seemed like it said, no more than 5 rooms, but just a second, I'll tell you what it says.
1 to 5, correct?
1 to 5 is a bed and breakfast, qualifies as a bed and breakfast. Anything over that is a hotel or motel.
One of the discussions we had was, could there be houses that have more than 5 bedrooms? Because so right now, by our definition, that would push that into a hotel, and that's probably, maybe it does. But I think those were the two issues that we were kind of haggling with, is should we increase that number on the rooms for a bed and breakfast, and then put the kind of cross-reference bed and breakfast with short-term rental. Bruce, you may know, and this is just a question because it came out of our discussion about this, but does the county have regulations that would govern somebody before they turn their house into a short-term rental? Is there any county, and I'm thinking fire marshal, because that was one of the questions one of the discussions we had is, okay, I say I've got 5 bedrooms, but my bathrooms, I may only have 3 bedrooms by what I think state law would say, but who defines that? Who regulates that, I guess? Because that goes back into, how many bedrooms really can people rent out? But I don't know who or does anymore. Do you know?
Look, I can only speak to my experience back in Warren County, and their issue wasn't so much the number of rooms, because they just generally are taking existing homes and
Right.
and renting them out. But the biggest issue was party houses, because Western had,
Sure.
football
Yeah.
games, and they would
No,
come in
we
and take
never
over the
did.
house.
Never had.
That was the big issue. Nobody ever inspected them. Although it could be done. But we don't have a business license to do that. You'd have to do it under zoning compliance.
Well, in this particular case, any bed and breakfast is gonna have conditional use permit, because they all require a conditional use permit. So John actually has a duty once a year to determine whether or not they're operating more than 5 beds. Bedrooms,
Yeah.
and if they are, then they lose their conditional use permit. I mean, that's the current situation.
But they still do regulations like there are windows, talked about that.
Well, yeah, because that's what kind of brought that up
egress
was
thing.
when
Yeah,
TR, was going to.
and that's
So
gonna
like you
fall
said-
to the fire marshal. If you don't have a window and
Yeah.
something happens, then
Yeah.
the fire marshal's gonna be there.
That's that's a regulation apart from where we're gonna allow bed and breakfast, i.e. short-term
Right,
rentals.
right.
Okay,
That's handled under, as you say, under fire department, fire marshal or health
Right.
department or somebody.
For, and the definition of bedrooms, I know over and then McCracken, but I was always
Yeah.
told. That it has to have a closet.
Well, this doesn't even say bedrooms, it says guest rooms. But not more than 5 guest rooms are used to provide or offer overnight accommodations for transient guests or compensation. And we did not go into defining, for our purposes, what constitutes a guest room. So we're gonna use the common, unless somebody decides to further define it, we're gonna use the common.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys think is a guest room.
what constitutes a closet?
Storage.
Hole in the wall.
That was a bedroom when I had kids.
Yeah,
So 5 rooms, we okay with leaving it at that?
I am, no any problem there.
I think I still think that's
It
probably,
revert to the.
that's a good size house,
Yeah, it is a
5
big
bedroom.
house. We don't have many of them.
So then it's just a matter of either editing your definition of bed and breakfast / short-term rental, or
Well, the only reason we're doing it at all, because frankly, it works right now. Legally, it works right now. Nothing needs to be changed. The only reason we're changing anything is to help assist someone who is.
they're saying I'm not running a bed and breakfast, I just want to rent my house out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so rather than having to come and talk, well, they're gonna be coming to talk to John anyway.
right.
Yeah,
But, but if they wanted to look it up, and if they wanted to look at the ordinance themselves. You were gonna put the words short-term rental somewhere in this ordinance. So that somebody that didn't have access to John or Bruce or somebody, but just had an ordinance in their hand could figure out. What they were doing. So you can either. You can either define the term short-term. Rentals, and you can say. You use the same definitions you got in bed and breakfast. Or. Or in your definition of bed and breakfast, you can put beside it. In parentheses, short-term rentals. And
That
of
makes more
course, that's not under S, so if you're looking for short-term rentals, they're not, they need to be looking, they're gonna find it in the definition of bed and breakfast.
Right. Well, but do we need to if we put in the definitions, but then do we also need to put in the schedule of uses? And that's where you would have the S,
It depends.
short-term rental, and just say,
You could do that, but if you didn't define it,
right.
then you're creating an ambiguity.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you would define it. I'm saying, but do we also need to put it in the schedule of uses?
Um, I'm-
If we define it
I
as
may-
bed and
I'm a lawyer, so I
breakfast,
may not be the right guy to
parentheses,
ask.
okay,
But if what you're trying to do is just to help somebody just looking, then probably put it, just define, maybe as a separate definition, define short-term rentals, and then go in your schedule of well, for that matter, as part of your definition of short-term rental, you can just equate it with bed and breakfast. and then-
Seabed and breakfast.
Yeah, see bed and breakfast. In fact, that might be the simplest way to
that's
handle it,
the
period.
simplest way.
It's just to put short-term rentals, see bed and
Say bed
breakfast,
and
and
I
make
agree.
that one change and otherwise leave it alone.
Everybody okay with that? Yep.
All right. So we just need, I need to make that one proposed, develop that one proposed ordinance and then have John set it for a public hearing for the next time we get together.
Perfect.
Have a public hearing, then we'll send it to the city council for action.
All right,
Sound right?
sound good.
Okay. If you don't mind, before we talk about reviewing the Washington University study. John and I stumbled up on, look at 4A on the agenda. Discussion on subdivision regulations relating to structure requirements for a minor plat subdivision in an I2 heavy industrial zone. That came up because one of the plans was going to do a subdivision. They were dividing off a little piece of something so they needed to do a subdivision plat. And one of the requirements is you have to depict all of the structures currently existing on the property. Good grief. When you're talking, if you're into the structural part of one of those plants, that's just not really feasible. And so those were John and my observations. This is almost not doable. I mean, it probably is doable, but man. Do you guys, the idea behind the subdivision regulations, and just so that you've got it in context, this is just a regulation. This is not an ordinance. It's not a policy. It's just subdivision regulation. You guys adopt it. It's a subdivision regulation. And that is part of the current subdivision regulation, even with regard to a minor subdivision plat. You know, so if they're doing a minor plat, one like you signed tonight, one that you just sign off on, they're still supposed to depict all of the structures.
Six structures.
On the one hand, that seems useful information. Because, you know, if it was out by a roadway or if it was near other plants, you know, sort of get in your head what it is that's being divided off here. And are you making this an impractical? Is this subdivision making this an impractical, unusual piece of ground? You know, knowing that there's piping that exists 2.5 feet from the line is kind of an important piece of information, or even running over the line, going over to somebody else's property. But boy, that's a pretty difficult situation. So talk among yourselves. What do you think? Is that something, it is you guys' responsibility to try to make sure that when you do subdivisions, that you're not creating totally unusable tracts. But in the I2 zone, is that even something you're able to do?
That's what I was gonna ask, is if you just take it out of I2 zone completely to depict each structure.
Yeah.
Or is that too broad and kind of,
I don't
Leaves
know.
it open
Do you
for-
not put, do you not even put the buildings in?
well,
You know, and it is a difficult question. It's not a really simple question because some stuff, you know, you got a building the size of a football stadium.
Yeah.
Well, okay, it might be good to know where that is.
Say main structures or something like that, define it a little bit more, but we don't know what's a main fact.
I don't know. I've had so little to do with the operations of those plants in the past 40 years. I simply, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough. You boys that work in the plants. You boys that work in the plants. Are gonna have to help.
My knee jerk is, Google Maps will give you that probably to the level that you want. I mean, I use maps a lot today in going to say, okay, well, this is where we're going, and we can look in and see. So we have to have a surveyor sitting in the back. So, Mr. Surveyor, for being able to incorporate a Google map into a plat drawing, how much trouble is that?
You can use aerial photography. Google Maps may be the accuracy tolerances may be off a little bit on Google Maps.
Yeah.
But there's publicly available aerial photography that you can trace the shapes of the buildings on them. Then get the footprint. Now, it's not gonna give you any vertical information.
Yeah, just shows the
where
footprint.
it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Some of these things like utility encroachment may be difficult to capture off.
Gosh, yeah.
Well,
Some of those underground lines are all over the place. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
and you get tangled up in the definition of structure too.
Mhm.
Because as you all know, it's gotta be more than 6 inches off the ground and it's gotta be more than 100 square feet.
Right.
To be a structure. Well, okay, but how do you measure that? When you got a pipe, you know, and you got a 1 inch pipe. What are we measuring? Measuring the
Yeah.
pipe? Are we measuring the building and all the pipes that are attached to it, or? I don't know. I just don't know, guys. It's a. I don't know. Take your answer. And it may be, the answer may well be, we don't need that information because it's publicly available. If we want to get involved in. Something looks unwise. If somebody is proposing something unwise. However, when you're doing it as a minor plat, we all know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna stick it under your nose, you're gonna sign it.
sure.
Nobody's gonna seriously
I don't know.
look at anything.
I don't know. Is this it? Or is this the one we're talking about?
Is this just an example or?
That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah, that's
John suggested, let's try that and see, because it came in without any buildings on it at all, and he said, let's try to overlay that on, I don't know if it's Google Maps or what it was, but that's what it came out to be.
Okay. And then it would take, so what they would look at is. I'll pass this over so you can see it too, but. Taking like the larger part and subdividing the larger part, is that what they're looking at?
I think it's just down in the bottom right corner.
This? That piece?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's what they're cutting
Oh,
off.
okay. Yeah, I mean, if I saw something like that and I saw, okay, they just subdivided one little piece of. Ground there from the picture, it doesn't say there's anything there, but yeah, right, but I mean,
They came over the computer and printed it. It'll be on a
yeah. Right,
2 to 3.
But the other side of that, Brad, is that's the kind of the issue that Greg's making.
Yeah.
Is because so many of these areas that they might be subdividing are huge
yeah,
and have many structures in there.
right,
And so to kind of get you oriented of where you are, you at least need to see the footprint of it. But I think you can do that fairly simply though.
mhm,
Well, procedurally, you know, you should never lose the forest for the trees. When it's just a simple little cutting off one piece,
mhm,
it's gonna be dealt with as a minor plat, and it's never gonna come before you guys.
Right.
It's gonna be presented as, it doesn't have that many regulations that it's gotta, or restrictions that it's gotta meet.
mhm.
And John's gonna look at it and say, well, you don't have a building within 7 foot of the side yard and 25 foot of the front yard and. Yeah, it meets all the criteria. And so present it, get the neighbors to consent and sign off on it.
And until,
And that's it.
yeah, until that situation comes up, then we won't see it. And
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And you won't see it then.
Yeah.
But when you might see it is if somebody's actually gonna be dividing off a bunch of tracts.
Mhm.
Or if it's just the unlucky one that is the third division of a piece of property that requires, no, that's not even true. If it doesn't meet the requirements for a minor plat,
Mhm.
if it involves the creation of a road. Or or a public utility or easement or some public way of some sort.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, they're thrown into, it's a major plat. And now you know what that, what a pain in the rear that is. They've got to appear here a couple of times, they got to draw pictures and submit all kinds of stuff. But honestly, that dichotomy between when a major plat is required and when a minor plat is required is not really the thing that determines when you need to know what the structures look like and when not.
Mhm.
And honestly, I'm not sure we maintain the expertise on this board to really contribute materially
Mhm.
to that question.
That's exactly right.
It's a good,
That's not really, we're not building houses out here. This is people making a chemical of some kind, and we don't know beans about it for the most part.
Mhm.
And so. I don't know. I don't know. It was momentarily, it was a rather traumatic moment when we realized, gee, this is requiring a lot. Really a lot. To ask somebody to draw this thing and draw every pipe and nut and bolt. And should we even do that? Because. Is that part of the building? Is that part of the square feet?
Right.
Right.
Is that part of what constitutes a structure? What constitutes a structure out there? It's just too. I don't know that we got the skill to figure that out. But in the same breath, if there's big buildings. I don't know, maybe we just require buildings. And not structures. I don't know. I don't really know enough about it to know what kind of structures are out there. That. I don't know. We've just run beyond my ability to think about this stuff. What do you think? You're an industrial guy.
Every plant out there will have a building schedule. Google Maps shows the big buildings very well. The industrial complexes, you're not gonna get velocity views. You're looking straight down on 60,000, 100,000 square foot warehouses. You can see the big buildings. Now, it depends on your, structure. Your idea of structure could be a pipe rack. That pipe rack can hold the flue gas thing that goes across the plant some quarter of a mile to an incinerator. It would be impossible to try to keep track of that kind of structure for this body.
Right.
It's pretty darn hard for the plants to keep track of that for themselves.
Right.
And what end are you trying to do that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, why are we trying to do and what level of detail is required to get the business of the city done?
Mhm.
But the Google Maps, I've recently had a working with Noah, we incorporated some Google Maps to do a site plan for us. Restaurant, where you have a site plan, use mostly plans I have and think many of them, right?
Mhm.
So I have a site plan. And they're pretty accurate, from a schematic. We'll have a schedule of buildings associated. I used to run that way. Now we've got a survey with the actual layout of the building. But to what end, a singular track. We're talking about subdivision plats. You're exceeding my capability to understand the complexity of what we're trying to regulate. And then you start talking about moving utilities from this plant to that plant.
Right.
Or, we have plants that sell a lot of utilities to one another.
I think we don't even have setbacks. In I-2. I don't think so. I think you can build right up to the line and nobody cares.
Yeah.
So I'm not even sure, honestly, I'm not even sure.
Well, that was my question is why are we even doing subdivision regulations in the I-2 area? I mean, so
Because-
realistically, who who cares? Because exactly what you said, I mean, you know, and we've seen it especially happen in the facilities here at Calvert where that, you know, where it was one owner, it is now multiple owners inside the same complex.
Yeah.
But that doesn't affect the city of Calvert City. Why? Zoning doesn't care. We don't care about that.
The basic question that you asked, why do we do it? Is because the statute, talk about people that don't have the skill to understand what's going on. The statute itself requires that anytime in a town like Calvert City, the size of Calvert City in a county, the size of Marshall County, when the third tract
Right.
is cut off of a parcel, that subdivision, if there is zoning in that town or that area, that subdivision plat has to be approved by the zoning commission.
Okay.
Plain answer, that's why.
Okay.
I don't think.
And it
it's
doesn't
because
give
we
us a
really
leeway to
care.
exclude certain zones.
It's more about the subdivision than it is about regulating what's going on inside of it, because frankly, we regulate virtually nothing in the IT,
Right.
particularly with regard to subdivisions.
Yes.
And so I guess, you know, we have some interest in get your plat drawn correctly so that somebody that's trying to use it can use it and don't run over somebody else's property and, you know, at least have your surveyor. You know, we've got these requirements that you got to have it signed off on by a surveyor saying that, yeah, these are your lines and you're not running out in the street and all that kind of stuff. But your basic survey lines are about the only thing that we regulate in any way out there. We threw the white flag in years ago
Right.
saying we're just not regulating out there. So. I don't know, I think I just talked myself into, yeah, just drop it. Your plat, draw your lines on your plat, but as far as we don't need. It stopped me if I run a ride here, but. We don't really care where your buildings are, because we don't have setbacks. For that matter, you can build across the lines, we don't care. We're not in the chemical business.
Right. And that would be a can of worms we don't even want to get into.
Well, you know, as far as locations of buildings and regulations that the adjacent structure, one company took exception to the way another company located something. Say was a particular operation that they felt was too close to the property line and too hazardous. How would they seek relief? They wouldn't come and say, hey, from the zoning regulation, they would seek relief through another route, whether it's an OSHA violation or something that would, you know, why would they be up in arms about that? So, you know, company to company, you think about our chemical plants, you'd think they would take each other on, you know, cordially, and then you'd up the ante, and the lawyers be talking to each other, and it'd be legal between the two companies. I think where you could run into a little more danger where you got more. You know, you had a situation where you had a fabricator or a trade shop having parking lot squabbles or something like that, access squabbles. That seems to me to be more of a matter that they might try to look for zoning and setbacks. If somebody wanted to have a nice corporate entrance to a shop or to an electrical place, I'm trying to resist the temptation of name names for them. If you wanted a nice entryway and somebody else wanted to treat it like a laydown yard right immediately adjacent to it, that would be the type of situation that seemed to look to us to try to do something zoning wise. Right? That's not the same as, you know, back in the depths of a chemical complex somewhere and having to do subdivision plats on that. You know, I'm trying to think of where the conflict could arise where they look to the zoning laws for relief.
Well, Calvert City has always taken the position that it's really the Wild West out there. And if you want to build your plant to the property lines on every side, that's your prerogative.
And it's regulated. For instance, if you get into storage of flammable liquids, I'm in that now, the fire marshal's got setback regulation. And they had to do the kinds of things Ben was talking about earlier.
The other entities take care of that. It's not a zoning issue, it is
Yeah.
such a safety
So
issue.
they require a setback, a storage tank. to
That
be
sheet
something
done
that-
by chemical plant.
Right.
Yeah, so you'll look at, what class. plan
And then
it
we
is,
bring it.
and have different property backing and setbacks and property lines, and that's coming from somebody else.
Oh,
You can sleep tonight.
Mhm.
How you figure?
Maybe we could figure it out. We're good.
Well, my inclination is to simplify
Simplify.
simplify the subdivision.
yes.
Plat requirements and certainly take out the buildings and structures. You don't have to put any buildings and structures. If you're in the I2.
Right.
There's no reason to require information about things that we're not regulating.
We're not,
Right.
we're not gonna regulate.
That doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
So simplify.
Mhm.
Makes me happy. All right. See, we've got a couple of folks in the. We got a crowd. So rather than making you guys sit and listen to us talk about. Talk about stuff that you don't care anything about. Do you guys have any questions or something that you want to ask or present to the board? Raj,
I'm just here to hear about the community stuff.
the Wash U thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Really?
cool.
So you need a hobby.
I was gonna talk about the rental stuff. That's where I walked in late and then y'all were already going, but I'm assuming you're just
The what? The wrinkle?
short-term rentals.
Oh, rentals. Yeah, did you hear the resolution of that?
I just walked in on the under 5 bedrooms.
What they've instructed me to do
I was
is,
reading your ordinances and seeing what you call a bed and breakfast. So I was trying to get caught up.
it's, basically what's gonna happen. It is a bed and breakfast, short-term rental.
Mhm.
They're gonna define it the same as bed and breakfast and regularly exactly the same as bed and breakfast.
Five guest rooms or less would be a bed and breakfast or short-term
Yeah,
rental.
makes most houses in cover.
Yeah.
So that means anybody can open up. That's where you're.
Well, no, you can only do it with a conditional use permit. And in order to understand what that means,
That's where I was just reading those. So I'm trying to get educated.
a conditional use permit is required when that kind of a use might be proper in some situations and might be improper in other situations. Retail installments, for instance, are proper along Fifth Avenue in most places. But Super Walmart is not.
Yeah.
But what's the flower place?
Basket.
Thank you, basket case. I've got bed and breakfast on the mind, and I want to keep saying bed and breakfast. Basket case, is proper there, but Walmart is not. They're both retail establishments. They both sell some of the same stuff. But some of them are proper in some places and not in other places. And that's what's recognized about bed and breakfasts, is that in some locations, yeah, nobody knows, nobody cares. It's just a non-issue. But in other places, maybe it does. If what you're wanting to put in is is a big operate, and you can make a 5-bedroom place a big-ish operation.
I don't want to put one in. I want to.
Yeah, but if you wanted to put in a 5, it could get burdensome on certain, particularly if you had a tight,
And Joel.
if you had small lots, if you were over in Old Calvert where the lots are 75 feet wide.
Yeah.
And you wanted to propose putting in a 5-bed and breakfast, maybe might not be appropriate in that place because the houses are just too close together and there's not room to park the cars.
Right, you can't park on the street.
Right.
And that's the purpose of conditional use, is the conditional use allows that individual and that individual situation has got to meet the approval, if you will, of the Board of Adjustment. And they will look at that individual case and say, okay, for this place, because of space, you can have 2 cars parked in this parking lot or this driveway, but beyond that, you're on the street and you can't park on the street. So it does some control of that. And so that what would be the proper way of getting that conditional use permit and get that done.
I think he may be concerned,
no-
same way we've talked about is the parking and how is that gonna be regulated?
Parking, the extra traffic in a pretty much a private subdivision. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like we're out here on six where there, you're not gonna have. When you go back in the neighborhood, I mean, there's
Right,
13 houses,
Right.
it's very low traffic.
Yeah.
And so when somebody proposes that,
That's what I was wondering, when do we come in, because.
yeah,
We
the
can-
the adjoining property owners will be notified.
right.
And the
Yeah.
hearing before the Board of Adjustment will be
Okay,
at a regular Board of Adjustment.
We just
didn't
know. when we got to chime in, that
There are opportunities. Well, there's a public hearing.
okay.
It's
We were
anytime somebody
trying to stay in the
requests-
loop. We didn't know.
Yeah.
We
So
need to.
the 5 bedroom limit could be a bed and breakfast or over 5.
No, over 5 is gonna be a motel.
Okay. So anything less
5
than
or
5
less,
Anything less than 5, that is short-term rental.
5 or less, could be a short-term rental or bed and breakfast. They're calling them the same.
But any of those will require conditional use in any zone.
Yeah, I just wanted to know when.
Yeah.
If it was just, if they just went slip back through, he got his conditional use and nobody got to say anything, or if we got. I don't attend these things, so I don't know.
That's right.
So we're trying to see when this.
So how does the public find out about somebody?
Well, if you're an adjoining property owner, you get notice. If you're not an adjoining
I'm
property,
not adjoining, I share the cul
then you have to watch the newspaper, subscribe.
And we might mention,
So that we don't live here, but
this is in progress, so.
I know it's a new.
Yeah, so,
thing. It's-
right, it is a new thing, so it's not, this is what we're gonna propose to the city commission, and they'll have to make that official,
Yeah.
but it looks like that's the path we're gonna go
Yeah,
with,
okay.
so,
That's-
because
yeah, just-
we see it as something that we're gonna have to address, because there's gonna be more of it, not less of it,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
we're too close to the
VRBO
lakes.
is getting to be kind of a big deal,
Oh,
so
yeah, like the bigger cities.
you gotta sort of get set for it.
Yeah.
And frankly, we are set for it. We've got bed and breakfast in here. But there's this thing, but bed and breakfast kind of has one connotation in your mind. And the VRBO has a different connotation, but we're gonna regulate them all the same. I mean, this is Calvert City, it's not
Yeah,
New York City. And so, you gotta kind of keep things
yeah.
workable. So we're just gonna treat them all the same.
Four big trucks and boats parked all over the place out in the roads and in the yards a few weeks ago, and.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
I
know
was
what
like,
you're
hey, you
talking
guys can
about.
park
Yeah.
in the road. Don't leave me.
We know.
But it's like,
We know.
it's
Yeah,
just, just something
well,
like that. It's like.
and that was our concern,
I don't feel like I should
for
have
us,
police
the
issues.
biggest issue really is parking. From
Yeah.
what we see, that would affect zoning, is because that's what we see could be a real problem if, you have a family come in, a big family come in and they swarm the place and the driveway holds 2 cars and they got 6. Well, that don't work real well.
Yeah.
So, but using the conditional use, that gives us a means to put some parameters on, okay, for your house, this is what you got, and you can have, these many you got to provide these many parking places and no parking on the street, and that way it gives the neighbor some relief and gives the homeowner some guidance too about what they can and can't do. And, we're kind of shaping as we go, but that's what we're trying to get to.
I don't want to take a thing where else done.
No, we appreciate the info.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Okay. So the only thing left on the agenda is the discussion of the Wash U study, and the discussion of the Wash U study is really more to give us a backdrop for all the things that we do. I mean, it's not really something, we're not gonna change the Wash U study. It's just to be aware of what they observe, what the recommendations are. And as we proceed with regard to bed and breakfast, that we kind of know, okay, well, we had some folks who really put some time in on this thing and studied this and made some recommendations. So, to some extent, we may want to continue to consider those things as we move forward. So, how far back do the tactics go? Is this whole thing tactics? No,
There's the summary. And then
executive summary and then various tactics. So. Is everybody ready except me?
Actually. Here in the hour, I'm actually ready.
How about you, Brad? Are you like, you good?
No, I had no.
Haven't
That's
read
what I
it
was
all.
looking for. So I've got a couple of
No.
folks with me. Um. How about? How about let's look at the executive summary together, because that's sort of a philosophical statement. And that can put us on the path. So I'll start reading. How about this? I'll start reading and you stop me. Okay? What do you think, Judge?
Go.
Okay, Calvert City has seen its first decade of population decline. When was this thing done? You better remember when they got finished.
4 or 5 years.
Was it 14?
I think so.
Okay,
10
10 years?
It's already been 10 years.
Is it 10?
I think it was 17, because I think it was right before I got here.
So 6 or 7 years ago.
Probably listed on page 1, 2, 3, because we don't have those, so, but it's.
Hang on, hang on a second.
Yeah, I don't think
I guess.
whole thing, they ain't been done on.
I think they get them now.
I don't see a date on it. No.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing the date actually in what I'm looking at here, but we're gonna guess
Anyway.
about 17. Okay, so Calvert City's seen its first decade of population decline from 2000 to 2010. While this may not be a cause for concern, it must be noted that both Kentucky and Marshall County have experienced a net growth of population for the same period. I don't know that I knew that.
Yes, 17.
17?
Yeah.
Okay. So Kentucky and Marshall County both experienced population decreases during that same decade.
No, they experience growth. No, it's.
No, it must be noted that both Kentucky and, oh, net growth. I'm sorry. Thank you. It must be noted Kentucky and Marshall County experienced net growth in population for the same period. Similar trends are seen in Benton, a direct competitor in Calvert's growth imperative. The causes for population decline are both demographic, death succeeding births, and sociological. Are they saying, did Benton have an increase? Or are they saying Benton also had a decrease?
You're saying that Benton had
An increase? An increase? Increase. You think it's
Was
a
not
decrease?
clear.
I don't know, they didn't write, but they're not great writers, are they? Growth over the same period, similar trends I've seen in Benton. They're competitive to Calvert's growth imperative. Okay, an unclear brand. When we asked Western Kentucky residents about their impression of Calvert City, they were hard pressed to identify what sets the city apart. While its family feel, safe and secure perception and proximity to the lake are clear features of the city of Calvert City. Other neighboring cities offer many of the same advantages of Calvert without an association with industrial condition. Currently, Calvert City is trying to both compete with these other cities for visitor traffic and the residential market. I would love to know what they would get right now, so they ask the same set of questions. What I get in Calvert City, honestly, is much different from her. And she is a product of, she is Washington, she is a product of Washington, a direct
Well,
product of Washington.
Right.
I agree.
And what she's brought to the party, I think has.
Has addressed a lot of these things. That's what that was my impression as I read through
Yeah,
it.
it's been
Thank you,
noticed.
Blair. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I may be dead wrong, but I get the impression that if you ask. Well, Ashley, my Ashley down in the office, the new lawyer that's in my office. You know, her husband can't wait to get moved to Calvert City because of the golf cart, for the ability to use golf carts. Of the parks,
Mhm.
of the cleanliness of the whole situation. And the family atmosphere that they feel in Calvert City.
Yeah.
They are anxious to get here now. They can't find a place to move to.
There's.
There are no places to move to,
Right.
but if they could, they're willing to pay a premium dollar to live here.
Mhm. if we just had a developer that would come in and build some new houses or stuff,
Well, I think retired people,
wouldn't we? Yeah, retired engineers
A
that
couple of them.
maybe have some
that's
property
what I'm thinking.
that they
retired
could build some places on that people could buy.
Try to find a builder, right?
Anybody know anybody?
Couple of those are good.
So I think I remember seeing the overarching results of it after they completed it, not this, but I remember empty nesters being part of their big focus. I'm gonna say that would have changed, like something you said, I wonder what people would ask now. I think that would change, and I think that because I see a lot of like people my age and younger wanting to move from, maybe Louisville, maybe not Louisville, Lexington, but looking to slow down, but then be in a place where they can ride their golf carts around, be in a smaller community, enjoy the parks, more so than empty nesters. And even in my little neighborhood, I see more families moving in than I do empty nesters. So I don't know, I think that might change if they did it again, I don't know.
One thing too, I read an article several years ago that people that empty nesters actually have the same wants and needs now as someone that's in their thirties, that's, starting a new family. So that it does make sense. If you're recruiting empty nesters, then you're really recruiting people that are in their thirties because they want, smaller yard. They want, to be able to have that walkability through their city that they choose. So it's.
Actually, the kids from WashU sort of made that. The same, we want to attract we want a young breath in here, was made at the time that they were making their reports. And they made the observation a little bit different, but what they said was, when you get the empty nesters in, the younger, their family follows.
That's true. And actually, it's kind of backwards.
Exactly, that's, Peter and Marley and my grandson just moved here from Columbus, Ohio, because they wanted to live here. And her parents, who are from about an hour and a half from Columbus, Ohio, are now seriously considering moving here just because it's such a great place.
Well, they want to be close to the grand.
And they want to be close to the, and that's true.
Yeah.
But I see that the two kind of go together, and that the pickleball, it's interesting that you've got this enormous pickleball thing going on. And the frisbee golf thing.
Yoga classes, I remember a lot of things.
Yeah, and the yoga classes and honestly, even the trails.
Yeah,
I mean, the biking, there's a lot of biking that goes on up and down these trails. All that stuff is attractive to both ends of that spectrum.
I think so too.
I'm waiting for somebody to start a golf cart bus terminal. Got a golf cart about 30 yards.
Yeah, but when I put the grandkids, I don't have any seats left.
yeah.
I have to get a trailer.
Stretch level golf cart. don't you?
There's a section I found on page 22.
22.
I don't have it.
No, we had 22.
No, you got page 22?
No.
Okay.
On my phone.
No.
No.
Well, that's not-
Okay, page 22, this is off the server, the American computer finally did something good.
Have to send it.
Why not another segment? So this thing is a commentary on the bottom of segmentation methodology, okay? It talks about the different segments. One being adolescent Amy, college Collins is 2, first job Franks, 3, suburban Sam's, which would be empty nesters is 5, and 6 would be the retired wraps. Okay, so then they come up and they say empty nesters, that's what they recommended, right? Down to the last paragraph or the last section of this thing, I'm gonna read it, sorry. Calvert City has a unique blend of assets and resources. Its geographical location, proximity to other major cities and Kentucky Dam Village makes it attractive to both younger suburban family, that'd be the suburban Sams, as well as empty nesters. The perception survey, however, presented unique insights into the different preferences of these two age groups. So it's talking about, we should be attracted to both families and these empty nesters. We just had that conversation with. Based on the findings from the survey, if we look at the responses of the younger participants compared with those of the empty nesters, there is a stark difference between the way the two segments perceive Calvert City. As noted in the age-based perception section above, we see that empty nesters have a largely positive perception of Calvert City's different assets. Younger families, however, have a contrastingly different perception and rate Calvert City comparatively negatively on many of its different assets. And it goes on. In addition to safety and family-friendly neighborhoods, these young suburban families also value ease of access to educational institutions. Currently, Calvert City does not have either a middle or a high school within its city limits. By positioning Calvert City as a suburban community to Paducah, commuters would have to first drive south in the opposite direction, go to Benton, drop your kids to school, and then drive northwest to the job in Paducah. This factor would weigh quite unfavorably against Calvert City as it increases the time spent commuting, as well as negatively influence the after-school community that their children could be part of. Ultimately, the access to schools and the comparatively negative perception of younger participants make Calvert City an unattractive option for younger families looking to settle there. And I was looking for that. I remember reading that. And that's, you know, our school systems are set by our county boundary.
County, yeah.
Not really by municipal activity.
Yeah.
You can't play that game.
Just run down 95 and annex Central. And you're good. So then it's within city limits. I say things like that.
But, you know, the educational thing is an issue.
Yeah, but doesn't that also the demographic drive that too, though? Right? The need for. I mean, is there,
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids.
if
out
there,
there.
right, if there was a need for a middle school, you know, like,
It's a chicken and egg.
right, right.
I have people, I would say, pretty commonly come talk to me about Calvert Elementary
Mhm.
and middle school and where we're going from there. And the bottom, of my answer is always the demographics drive.
Mhm.
Yeah. Demographics drive.
Yeah.
You know, my kids went through elementary school here and we had pretty high opinion of daycare. When I first moved to the community back in '92, there's a different coupling here with the Calvert City daycare in Central Elementary, with a coupling with some private daycare, it's probably better than here, and I think it probably detracts from the demographics.
Mhm.
The numbers from Calvert Elementary,
Mhm.
but the demographics, and so you got Sharp and Calvert both, which have, you know, lower enrollment, and I believe. You're probably looking at a North Elementary the next time there's a need for a big physical plant change. I think that the state regulations will drive them that way. From a census, just the demographics of the situation. So you got a chicken and egg thing. You know, once you.
Population's gonna drive the middle school thing. We don't have
Well,
enough
it's gonna drive
population to
the-
have
it's gonna
middle
drive the
school.
elementary school thing.
And the elementary, we're struggling,
Yeah.
yeah, because of,
Right. If you don't have enough students,
Right.
exactly right. That's what the mayor said, that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Calvert Elementary's been there a lot of years. I went to this school,
oh, yeah.
you know, so it's been there a long time. So it's gonna be up for replacement and
The
it won't
burnt down
be,
the old,
it won't be built here when it's replaced if,
No.
if the population doesn't go up.
you're right. There'll be a middle school, but it won't be here, it'll be in the area.
Yeah, you know.
I don't know if it'll be in the city.
Blair, do we have any idea what's happening population wise on a micro level in Calvert City? Do we know if in the past, I don't know, 2 years, 4 years, whether we've had any sort of an influx? And I do realize that the kinds of things that really honestly, the projects that we're doing now and the stuff that you do has to build a reputation, and then the reputation, it doesn't happen overnight. I get that. It takes.
The last, as far as population wise, the last report that I saw, we were still down, decreasing, trending down.
Oh, still do, you know what period of time that was
That
covering?
was 2021.
Okay, so recently.
That also depends on who, about the census and.
That's true.
Housing is a big issue.
Mhm.
And it's not building housing either. We've got lots of houses. It's improving the lots that we have and the housing that we have, so people want to live there or remodel.
Right.
We do have a lot of available houses. We do,
Yeah, they're just not livable.
okay.
You know, there's a lot, there's a lot of flipping going on, but they are renovating a lot of houses. I mean, I ride by on every street in this town and you can see it, it's changed, town's changed a whole lot since 17.
Yes.
Yeah.
Post COVID, it's different. I mean, not every house, but you see a lot of people, a lot of families that have moved in different places that we didn't have 5 years ago, or whatever it was. It's just not perfect, but they are renovating, they have been. There is a shortage of probably areas of new construction too, although, you know, that subdivision out there by Kingswood, it's filled up too. just about. And
Oh, yeah.
the city was part of that, making it happen. So,
Does it, can you tell from what you're observing, is it the homeowners that seem to be renovating, or is it?
Well, I mean, so I'd say there's a mixture of people that are buying homes and renovating them before they can sell, but. You know,
Sell it,
tell the
flip it,
families
that's what we
moving
do
in
right
there.
there.
There's new people in
Let
town,
them do it.
a lot of new people in this town.
I would love to get at a statistic on our rental availability.
Right.
The number of units in rental buildings. Properties that are rental, but also the number of private, single family homes that are rented. I don't know if we've got a good
Water company database.
statistic on that.
Yeah.
That 20% was the rental. Last one.
I mean, I don't know how that should be. I don't know what our benchmark should be on that. I don't know if it's high or low.
Well, probably depends on who you're trying to attract.
Pretty much.
Is there anywhere it addresses like the image, I think about driving in on 95 and some of the dilapidated homes we have that I'll drive by.
On Main Street,
Mhm. And I just think of the plant workers that are coming in. Would I be attracted to come to Calvert City if that was all I saw coming down 95? I think we have some issues that need to be addressed on 95. You know, I think I know there's some expansions planned. I think it probably different plants and maybe newcomers will be coming in here, but they need a good image on our main roads coming in. I didn't know if it was addressed anywhere. I mean,
In the WashU report, it was addressed of the city, like the, what was it, offering types of incentives and, a program, like a housing improvement program where you offer grants.
mhm.
I don't know if that is the board to address that, but. The fountain, sort of the Fountain Avenue project tend to look is the one that everybody refers to because it was so successful. But, and I've talked with the attorney that sort of oversaw that, and he said every one of them is different. It's not a pattern, because every property that got improved was done a little differently. But if you were just to look at it broadly and philosophically, what was going on is the city would either purchase a lot or in some fashion offer a developer an opportunity to save some investment on the front end. If they would develop this, if they would develop this, and it would be a house of a house of a certain size with certain amenities. And if you would develop that, then we will, for instance, give you the lot. And then sell it, and then you have to sell it you gotta sell it within these parameters. And in that way, they got developers, they tempted developers to do it, to take the risk and develop it.
One thing about that, Greg, though, what they did is they put the infrastructure in there and they did gain ownership of the properties and they pretty much gave them the lots to build on.
Right.
From a developer's perspective, that's where they get their return on their investment.
Right.
To do that. And so, you know, I think that that's something similar, because Calvert City could figure out how to do that in town with a lot of these lots that do have some properties that are, you know, getting some age on them, and you know where they're at.
Yeah.
You can drive around and look at them. I think that's a way that you can help motivate somebody to help build some homes here. They know they're gonna get the return on money. And that's what happens. A lot of those are actually individual property owners that had a home custom built, you know.
They also put stipulations on who lives there too, you know, how long you live there. I think you have to live there for 10 years. Or you have to give back like the portion that the city funded you. So, I mean, that encourages people long-term living.
To stay, right.
I've actually thought about that myself, and I thought. It's, if you could buy. Corner to corner, both sides of the street, so that what you're developing is a neighborhood instead of a single. In my plain mind, that works, but now you're buying a house in an upgraded neighborhood. You're not just buying an upgraded house in a neighborhood and hoping the rest of the houses will upgrade. You're buying in an upgraded neighborhood. You know. Again, Calvert City is like a fairy tale, you know, it's wonderful. And if you could live on a street. Where, yeah, all the houses are, you know, 1,100 to 1,500 square feet. But dang, if you're in the first 5 years of your marriage or first 10 years of your marriage. That's a pretty nice neighborhood situation to live in.
Yeah.
If you've got if you know the people around you. Are like you, and they're spending a few bucks on their house too.
Right.
And yeah, they're small houses, but there's nothing wrong with small houses. That's kind of nice. So let's take care of it.
Well, and it points at the mayor raised while ago, and that's one of my concerns is I drive through and because that's exactly what you see on a block. You know, all it takes is one house run down on your street and man, that takes the wind out of the sails.
Yeah.
And that's what concerns me about the rental properties coming in. And again, I'm not against rentals, but sometimes those aren't as well maintained as
Right.
a homeowner there.
Yeah.
And as those rental numbers go up, I think we'll see more of that. And what that does is, just what you said, it affects the whole block. It doesn't affect, you know, that one house, it affects the whole block.
I don't think tagging rental with some of the property maintenance issues is probably quite fair. Bruce could probably shine some more light on his frequent flyers of nuisance stuff. I mean, we've got some residents that live in these places and let them
Sure.
go way down.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what the percentage breaks out. One or the other.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the right number is. You don't have any rental property in community, it's obviously bad. Could be bad, but I don't know what's high, what's low. You know, and you know, rental seems to come in two flavors, either higher dollar rentals that are nice and would attract people as they come in and learn an area and then springboard. Or don't spend any money because you're never gonna recoup it, and it's a
Right.
race to the bottom of the price per month. File.
Yeah. Right,
And which one do you got?
right.
I don't know, I don't know, put you on the spot, which one's the more common denominator, people who are property owners or folks who are rental.
One of them dealing with now are mainly property owners.
Really?
This. I'll choose my words carefully, just
Okay.
not to take care of it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you know, and I've seen this too from other entities that I'm involved with, but because it's a reality is that as folks grow older, they can't maintain the place like they once did.
Amen.
And we're dealing with, I think we deal with that some too. That, you know, it's not, it's they're the owners of the place, but they can't maintain that place like they used to. And so the place is starting to run. But again, that affects the whole block. And that's, and I mean, that's a fact of life. That's always going to be there, but
That's true.
yeah, but that's another situation. I think we see it. And even when you talk about empty nesters, that kind of problem can create that problem, and but I don't know I don't know how you solve that. But it's a reality.
It's not been a high percentage of what I've dealt with thus far.
Good.
It's just attitude, mentality,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
There will always be knuckleheads.
Just some people when they had to take possession of something that falls into disrepair.
They seem to be different. Redoing a house in one of the older Calvert neighborhoods seems to be a completely different mindset of a developer who's building cutting edge stuff, who's building condos and, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
One is
Yeah.
cottages. Casey and Ben, live on Clay Street in Paducah. Their particular street, corner to corner, it's really cool. I mean, they're like cottages. It's like a block of cottages, and it's fantastic. Leanne and I go there sometimes, ride the streets of old Paducah on our trikes, just because it's so quiet and parts of it, like that little section, is really kind of enchanted. And I see some of that happening in Calvert City. But that's a very different development. That's almost like what you see on HGTV, with the hometown, the people that do the hometown upgrades and those things. That's its own little world, its own little industry. Whereas, the two buildings that are down here, the two houses that are three that are down here by my office, that's a different, and they're wonderful. They're wonderful places to live. But it's a different developer attitude and mindset going in there to do that, completely different.
Right.
And the two don't necessarily go together. They're very, very different, done by different developers in different places for different reasons. And we've got a lot of potential cottages and that kind of enchanted neighborhoods from all over Old Calvert and from Cedar Street to Oak Park. There are potential enchanted neighborhoods all over that area. But there's a lot of it. And it would take a lot of investment to actually go in and make those things what they can be. But we've got the neighborhood, we've got Blair. That's happening. We've got that already. We've got the amenities that make those enchanted neighborhoods enchanted.
You got the infrastructure too, that's a big.
And we've got the infrastructure.
New development infrastructure is a big deal, it's a big cost.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah.
But you got it all there, and you got the density's right for doing what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta figure out what to do with some of the older homes that are falling out. Some of them have some major structural issues too. You got kid homes in town and y'all know where they're at, that they put in, brought them in on a railroad car and nothing, but some of those, so when you look at today's building codes, they're not even close.
Right. So you got some houses that can be upgraded, some that need to be raised and replaced. But if you raise them and replace them with out of context houses, it doesn't really help because you can't go to the next house and upgrade it because it's not gonna fit in the neighborhood anymore. So it's almost like it takes a unified intent of a developer or a group of developers to, let's go into this area and let's invest here and make our money here. And it seems doable to me, but I don't know how you. I don't know how you.
There's a lot of pieces to that. I mean, you got your nuisance code that you're
Right.
gonna have to deal with that part of it.
Yeah.
And I think you just gotta sit down and kind of look at what all you gotta do to make all those things work together, to stop some of the people who've done it, you know, in the say.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta be realistic too. The neighborhoods like you're talking about, my son lives in one in St. Matthews in Louisville.
Yeah.
It's a cottage street. The bones of his neighborhood are comparable, probably it's tighter, it's more dense, the lots are smaller. But the infrastructure is similar to what we have. Problem is, the difference is that they're closer to a city center that offers lifestyle, that offers things. And you have more people with greater income, more resources are attracted to those areas close into Louisville. Now, there's a lot of, as our culture changes, COVID, everybody's working from home, so you gotta make sure you got good connectivity. Is more important than anything. I think we got decent, it's not cheap, but we've got decent connectivity available in most areas. But where do you get it so special that folks with that kind of income level want to go there? You know, these the plant jobs, you know, they're great jobs, they're life-changing jobs, you know, allow people to live the lifestyle that they want to live. And oftentimes that means a long commute. You drag them out of long areas. I mean, I've known people that come up from Tennessee. They wring the life out of a car and run over 2 or 3 deer a year, but they make enough money, they can sustain that lifestyle. Yeah. So what is it? How do you attract them here closer and be it, you know, attracted to the folks who do the cottage thing? And I believe, as I think about it, the study's, you know, pretty good. A lot of folks say it's baloney because everybody who comes to Calvert is coming with children, coming with family. And then the note about the school system and the flip side of that attitude makes it more of a problem. But, you know, we need to be realistic. I mean, we go, what was it, Forest Circle? Yeah, they're bigger houses to begin with. You compare to the Forest Circle area of Paducah, that's up above. Along that road inside, you know, where Mellow Mushroom is, you go up the hill, that's Forest Circle, that neighborhood in there. There are a lot bigger homes and stuff. But again, you're close to a metro area.
Yeah.
You're down, you know, you can get some folks who wanna commute by walking places. It's a little different for us. So there's a lot of factors. How do you find the secret sauce that makes everybody when we come in and convert one of these cottages, you know?
Well, to try to bring this part of the discussion home. I was talking to some city staff today. This particular board has the disadvantage that we're dealing with our friends and neighbors. And on the one hand, Historic Calvert says, it's my property, quit telling me what to do with it. I paid for it, leave me alone.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
But trying to develop Calvert into a neighborhood of cottages, that doesn't happen when you just say, throw away zoning, you just let everybody do what they want to do. Well, as you let one person do what they want to do, you're discouraging 4 or 5 others.
Yep.
And that's really the board zoning adjustment. Man, that's a tough one. You guys are a little more like the legislature, you know, you're sort of laying out the rules and it's their poor job to have to enforce them. But that's hard. But every time you make one of those decisions, you're kind of faced with this huge philosophical question. Do I fold and just make it easy? Do I make Calvert City have a better reputation? Because everybody that comes in here and asks for something is going to come in here saying, Calvert City is the hardest place in the world to build a house, start a business. Well, it's not. I will tell you, go to Paducah. It's harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tactic number 10, we got to streamline our zoning requirements. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And I read that, I'm thinking that I think our intention is to try to make it as simple as we can to invite people into the city. But again, I know perception is, but you ask anybody to do anything, well, you're telling me how I can do my own property. Well, yeah,
Well, when you pull into a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And there's one of those metal carports sitting in the front yard. Frankly, I don't want to live beside a house that's got a metal carport sitting in the front yard. I don't. Now, maybe there's a bunch of people who do, but I don't think so. I think but when somebody comes in here and they say, wait, my property this subdivision was created in the 50s. And my house was built in the early 60s. And now everybody's got 3-car garages behind their house, and I just want to put a 3-car garage behind my house. And we all look at those people, they're our neighbors, and we say, well, yeah, I understand. This is not fair because everybody else got a 3-car garage, and if you put a 3-car garage in, it's only gonna leave 18 inches between you and the neighbor's back door, but and so it's hard. It's hard. That's where the nuances of this big
Right.
philosophical planning that we're talking about come into play, because the dream is only as good as the body that's required to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's where you guys come. That's really the reason for us looking at this, is because as we move forward, if these dreams and insights are going to be, if any feet are going to be put on these, it's you that's going to put them on.
well, and I think so. I think part of that, Greg, too, is the fact that the disadvantage that Calvert has is that we don't have a ton of open area that new development can come in. We can't put another new subdivision in Calvert City. I don't know where it would go, because there's just not that space available unless we annex outside where we are right now. And maybe that's what we have to do. But so how can we help facilitate growth in the city and it's going to be by renovating the Heights area and the Calvert City area that's there. And that all goes back to exactly what you've been saying. And that falls right back into zoning of how we make it practical for neighbors to still be good neighbors and, us help a neighborhood, not tear it down.
Right. And it may come down to things like there are ways to say things and ways to say things. Maybe you can tell somebody, man, I understand, but this neighborhood just won't allow that.
Right.
Now, today, maybe your neighborhood is a little disjointed and looks so, but if you put your eagle's nest in your front yard, it's just going to make this continue. We're never going to gain any ground unless we've got a picture of these enchanted neighborhoods in Calvert Heights and Rolling Hills and those kinds of places, unless you guys have that thought that we are maybe not just shooting at empty nesters, but we're shooting at empty nesters and their 20, 30 something counterparts.
Mhm.
If you don't have that dream and that vision in your head, then the decisions you make on the individual things that come up in front of you never happen. It's not coherent, and it just never happens. Because frankly, if you're talking about the dollars that I'm spending at my house, well, that matters a whole lot to me. I'm not really all that concerned about Calvert City. I'm more concerned about my yard. Well, and that's everybody that comes before us. Everybody that comes before us has that same attitude. And you're going to catch criticism if you adopt any other attitude, unless you can say it in a way that conveys the real story, and that is, we care about you and the neighborhood that you live in. And I understand that you live on a lot that's not big enough to really be able to develop what you want to develop and leave enough space to breathe. I understand that.
Yeah.
But what? And
But I
maybe
still
that-
say it's changed a lot. It's like, I mean, you look at my block, pick it out. Right now, there's only one or two of us that live in that area that don't have children. And Pete, Kathy Gary's home where they used to live, they got 3, across the street's got 4. I mean, these people are moving in with kids and I love it. I mean, I want those kids riding those bikes and those skateboards up and down my street
Right.
all the time. And it's more and more and more all the time now. Like I say, all I want to do is replace windows and doors that are wore out from 40 years of living there.
Right.
And get it to where maybe someday I might want to sell it and move on
Right.
because I'm there by myself.
Right.
And there's a lot of that, a lot of people in town that are pretty much in the same boat I'm in. And
Well, this kind of comes from the hip, but for what it's worth,
Yeah.
or something to chew on. It might. Maybe in order to help you spend. It. And Mayor, this is not necessarily for this group as much as it would be for the city council, at least to start thinking in this direction. And Blair, you can sell Ice Cube Eskimos.
Good half Blair.
If we had. I don't know, some sort of experts like an engineer or an engineering group or somebody like the home, whatever those, or who those people on the HGTV people that could come in and give us some ideas about, look at this neighborhood. Yeah, and this is how you would do that. If you were going to try to transform this neighborhood into the Enchanted Forest, how would, practically speaking, how would you go about doing it? That might be information that might help sell some of your action.
Right.
This is what we're dreaming for that neighborhood. What you're proposing doesn't really fit that dream, but this would. And if we had some ideas about saying, okay, we can't do that. I know it's your house and you can do whatever you want to do with your house with permission of this group, but have you ever considered this as an alternative instead of putting that $1,500 contraption in your backyard? Have you ever considered maybe putting this $4,500 expenditure there and increase your property value by $20,000 and make it a part of a development philosophy?
Neighborhood, yeah.
If you had some suggestions that you could make. But, you know, I don't have the skill to do that, but my wife watches HGTV. ad nauseam. And there are people in the world that do have those skills that could say, you know, if you would do this, if you would paint that door red instead of turquoise, that would increase your property value by $50,000. I don't know. There are people in the world that do that kind of thing. And we have that central Calvert City is such a huge chunk of Calvert City. We don't have area to go build the new stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do. Who would have thought that what Tony built down there? Who would have thought in that there was a huge residential investment potential in that area down there?
There's areas that
Oh.
build and stuff. I mean, they've got it, but the problem is you gotta have the market. Well, we can talk about all this. And we're all speculating on what that market is, and that's what it is. You gotta set a goal somewhere down the line of what it is you're shooting for.
Right.
Here. You know, we can't say we're gonna capture 10% of these guys coming into the plan or whatever. Somebody's gonna have to target some stuff, and it needs to be pretty reasonable. You're talking about spending some bucks, and that's, I would argue that we got a lot of property that can be developed in the town.
It's gonna cost money, but it always does.
I'm telling you, you've got a lot of property.
Yeah.
Here in this town. Now, it's held by some families and stuff but if the market's there, everybody's getting old. I'm gonna tell you, you can flip it and it'll start going.
Yeah.
But you gotta have a market.
And
And
the
it
city,
can't be speculative.
the city can purchase property that individuals can't purchase. the law gives the city the ability to do that, and if there's an area of the city that needs to be developed, the city can take action.
I don't think you'd ever have to get to that point if the market was like it used to be years ago. I think it would drive it and sell, so.
Do you think the lack of sidewalks is an issue in the old part of Calvert here too? I don't know. Developing that little neighborhood, you know, I know we talked sidewalks before years ago.
I don't,
Just a thought.
I mean, so. Used to for several years back, the industrial complex being here was a deterrent. I mean, it was absolutely a deterrent, but I don't believe that's the case now. I think with the environmental regulations.
Right.
As
That changed that.
that picture changed. Yeah, so somewhere in that formula, that's gotta be discussed, and we don't want to talk about that, you know. But it's different. It's different than it used to be.
Well, I've got a lot of kids who are young marrieds now, and they're looking for places to live.
Yeah.
And the kind of world that I'm describing out here in mid Calvert City is where they want to live,
Yeah,
what they can afford to live in.
right,
They can't afford a $400,000 house. They don't want a $400,000 house.
right.
They want to mow the lawn on a
So
$400,000 lot.
that's a key issue too. I mean, what's your market look like? And what dollar values these houses gotta be at? If we're talking about trying to get a developer in here, that's pretty important. I mean, so upper scale housing now $200 a foot. That's what it is. To get something comparable with what most of the newer homes are in Calvert, it's $200 a foot. You know, with all this recent run up of inflation. So you can still build something for $150 a foot. Is that the market? It's gonna be pretty plain. It's gonna be spec, you know. So those are factors you gotta consider. Who you gonna sell the houses to? Who's buying them? You know.
And the city, Roger mentioned it earlier. We bought some infrastructure line. We paid dearly for it. There's been a large investment to the high in infrastructure. You know, we're not about to drop it. The city can afford it and we're doing it. And so whenever you have a tear down or a burn down or an empty lot, the value goes up. In fact, the Tony Campbell development was platted in late 70s. Right?
Initially,
Late
yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it sat there dormant, and it was platted against late 70s stuff. There's a field. It's a field with roads to it. It's not a lot of fancy subdivision requirements and having to do this and that and other thing like sidewalk. And the houses that are there and the densities there, it's something that just struck a chord in the marketplace. Boy, that thing's filled up in what, the last 4 years? Or something like that. Maybe longer, maybe time flies when you're having a good time. But I mean,
Yeah.
but you look at the price of the lots and where they were with the infrastructure had, they caught fire and took off. And but that was plotted. And
Long
made. I
time,
know I've
still a long
done
time.
that field since it's platted.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a long time. So when you go and you look at new subdivision requirements, what's needed, what is the infrastructure that we require our developers to put in? Is that what we need? Is that not? And what's that price? Is that developer gonna find value and being able to sell lots at where they wind up after he puts that infrastructure? And what do we do to sweeten that pot? And people cry foul on that, but if it's what we need to do to grow the city, that's a decision that we make now. You say, well, I can't do that because I didn't do it 30 years ago in the past, or I'm not doing that because we didn't start it out there. Forget that. The
Yeah.
past is the past. What do you need to do to keep the lifeblood moving?
Right.
I think it's different. I mean, there's different straight. That's a custom home. Those homes were built. They're not spec homes. They were built. Most of them were custom homes. So maybe there's a developer do some spec to get the younger folks in the.
My daughter lives in Fayette County, son's in Louisville, daughter's in Fayette, a relatively new place. Fayette County lands at a premium. You know, they're forcing folks out to adjacent county. She's in a place called McConnell's Trace and it's boom, 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 cookie cutter, and that dude is full. And it's got the sidewalks there and they were mandated that they do that. So it's a whole different flavor than where the son lives in St. Matthews, which is the old cottage style like we have. And not that one another, they stay full. You know, those houses are in there. I don't know, 200 feet between the structures. Everybody in the backyard got problems against. That's Calvert City's not likely to be that because people aren't gonna. We don't have the We don't have the pull and want people to be doing that. I think that our Heights area is great. Just need to make sure we keep going. Economic development is a whole different topic. Now that time.
Well, it is a different topic, but they're certainly related, which is why the city can buy land. Because it's for economic development. And residential development is a.
I think you're close. I mean, I think they're really close. You got this Varsity University study. It tells you the demographics. You know what your infrastructure is. You can get your statistics off the database. The county has the GIS data. You can get all the data in the world you need. Somebody's gonna have to make some decisions about what you're shooting for. Then you're gonna have to be specific about it, and you're gonna have to score yourself on it every year. There'll be an implementation plan associated with each of your goals, and you'll just have to see where you're going. And I think it's doable. I don't think it's that complex. I think you pick 4 or 5 areas and do something with it, give it a go. That attitude about what some of the folks say with my property, like, yeah, but we got a community attitude and we're trying to save this community with some standard of living here. And this is what the plan is, and we're going to do it.
I think a little bit of passion goes a long way. I really do. And I don't think it usually doesn't stem from very many people. Yeah. It's usually 1 or 2 or 3. And the passion of somebody that's passionate then kind of lights a fire in people with abilities. The people with the passion normally don't have the abilities. They just have the desire and the willingness to actually do it, to work. And you know, maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to now, you know, we bit off some stuff. Let's chew on it and think, what would be a reasonable thing to do? What would be a next step? Because you talk about figuring out what you want it to look like. Well, you know, if you got a sand blow and you're wanting to carve a granite structure, that's not possible. You got to be able to do what it is that you're dreaming about doing. So we've got to not only dream of these little things that are rolling around in my head, but we also have to think, okay, how do we find out if that's one of the things that one of the ways, and one of the ways that we can move forward. This helps, but this is not the whole picture because we're kind of getting down now. We've made huge, in my opinion, huge gains in the last 6 years. Yeah. I'm not blowing smoke up your skirt, Blair. Blair has made unbelievable changes in the perception of Calvert City. And that's the kind of thing that is the seed for some passion for making the next step now. Okay, now we have a place to play. We have a community that's a place that, well, that's a wonderful place to be. Now how do we stoke that fire? How do we stoke that fire and get the kids moving in? The retired people moving in. How do we make housing available? Where is it? Is it in the little enchanted forest down here, or is it in that big open undeveloped area between here and 62? Where is it? And what's the reasonable way? And what are the available developers? Where is that pool of available developers? But maybe the thing for us to do at this point is to think, okay, next step. What's the next step? And I've represented tons of entrepreneurs in the past 40 years. They don't do it. They're delegators. They figure out what needs to be done, and then they find the people that are able to do that. And it seems to me that each step is finding somebody that's great at that next step and letting them tell you how to put feet on your dreams. And so what's next? It seems like we talked about some really good stuff tonight. you think, Judge?
That was-
Well, I think you're right. And so, well, we need to look at it as, how do you get that ball rolling? And I think it is one of those things where it is a snowball effect.
Yeah.
You know, one block updated, changed, can start that snowball where it affects multiple blocks down through the city.
Lower Town, in fact, Lower Town and Fountain Avenue both happened,
Yes,
but they didn't happen at exactly the same time.
right.
And,
They didn't happen at once.
right, you gotta do one thing before you can do two.
They got really bad before that, I mean, they were really, really run down, and I don't know right offhand an area here that I can say in Calvert City
Yeah.
was in that condition.
Yeah.
They
And I-
made it easy to
Right.
come there and just wipe.
That's right. And that's one of the challenges I think
Right
we
here, you
have.
got, you know, even with some of those that I talked about, they've got nice places and people occupying and makes it a little bit.
Right. Right. All right. Anything else?
Give Blair a raise.
Right. That's what it sounded like to me.
That's what it sounds
You just put something on.
Larry, you might want to ask for that.
Yeah.
Since you get the mayor's ear here.
We're back here, but.
Anything else? There, motion we adjourn.
Motion adjourn.
A motion, Mr. Waring. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Meeting adjourned.